The desert planet was silent. Endless dunes stretched under a burning red sky, and the wind carried nothing but dust and heat. Captain Elias sat in the cockpit of his small exploration ship, staring at the strange readings on his screen. His heart beat a little faster. He had traveled alone for months, mapping forgotten worlds at the edge of the galaxy. Most days were quiet, empty planets, dead rocks, lifeless places. But today was different. His computer had caught a signal, a weak cry for help. At first, Elias thought it was nothing more than interference, static from the storms that raged across the planet. But then the sound repeated. A broken voice. A child's voice. Help. Please, someone. The words were faint, almost lost inside the crackle. But they were real. Elias leaned closer, listening again. The sound was not human. The tone, the rhythm, it was alien. He sat back in his chair, frowning. An alien distress call? Out here? He whispered. The planet below was listed as uninhabitable. The records called it hostile, poisoned, dangerous. No colonies. No visitors. No reason for anyone to be here. Yet the voice was clear. Someone was trapped. Elias hesitated. He knew the risks. His orders were simple: observe, record, and never interfere. That was the rule when dealing with unknown life. But the voice in the static was too soft, too desperate. It didn't sound like a soldier or a criminal. It sounded like a child. The ship shook as Elias guided it down through the dusty atmosphere. Red clouds swirled against the glass as heat pressed against the hull. The planet welcomed no one, but he was determined to land. The desert stretched out endlessly below. Broken rocks, sharp ridges, shadows where nothing moved. Yet as the ship descended, Elias saw wreckage scattered across the sand. Metal torn apart, black marks from fire and explosions. He slowed the ship and landed near the wreck. When the engines went quiet, the silence pressed against his ears. The world felt heavy, as if it did not want him there. Stepping outside, Elias pulled his visor tight. The air was thin, dry, and dangerous. His boots sank into hot dust as he moved closer to the wreckage. The remains of a ship lay half buried in sand, its frame twisted, its engines blackened. It was not human. The design was strange, curved like bones, marked with symbols he did not understand. He placed his hand on the metal. Still warm from fire, something terrible had happened here. Then he noticed the marks in the sand. Footprints, small ones, too small for an adult. They led away from the wreck across the dunes toward the dark mouth of a cave. Elias's heart tightened. Someone had survived. He raised his scanner. The weak signal was stronger now, pulling him toward the cave. With each step, the desert seemed more alive. The wind shifted, carrying distant growls as if hidden creatures were watching. The cave stood like an open wound in the cliffs, black and silent. The footprints ended there. Elias paused at the entrance, his hand resting on his weapon. The air was colder inside, heavy with damp stone and shadows. He switched on his light. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing broken pieces of metal dragged inside, scraps of fabric, and strange claw marks along the walls. Something had chased the survivor here. Deeper inside, the scanner beeped. The signal was close now. He took another step, then another. His light caught movement, a figure huddled against the wall. It was small, thin, trembling. Elias froze. It was a girl. Not human. Her skin glowed faintly in the darkness, pale and almost silver. Her eyes were large, luminous, filled with fear. Her clothes were torn, her hands scraped, and she held a broken communicator against her chest. For a long moment, neither moved. She stared at him, her body stiff, ready to flee. Elias slowly lowered his weapon and raised his hands, showing he meant no harm. "I heard your signal," he said softly. "I'm here to help." The girl's lips trembled. She tried to speak, but her words came out broken, strange. "Not safe. Leave. Me." Her voice was weak, shaking like the signal he had heard. Elias stepped closer, carefully, his light revealing more of the cave. Claw marks dug deep into the stone, fresh ones. Something had been hunting her. "You're not safe here," Elias whispered. "If you stay, you'll die." Her eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head. Fear held her tighter than the dark walls. Then the sound came, a low growl, deep and close, echoing through the cave. Elias turned sharply, his heart pounding. From the shadows, glowing eyes appeared. Dozens of them. The predators had come. Elias moved in front of the girl, his weapon ready. His light caught the shapes of the creatures, long limbs, sharp teeth, claws scraping stone. They were circling, watching. The girl gasped and clung to his arm. For the first time, she did not push him away. She wanted him to protect her. Elias tightened his grip on the weapon, his breath steady. He knew the truth now, this was no simple rescue. He had found someone abandoned on a world designed to kill. And if he chose to help her, he would be hunted, not just by the creatures of this world, but perhaps by the galaxy itself. But at that moment, with the girl shaking behind him and the eyes of monsters closing in, he made his first choice. He would not leave her. The growls grew louder inside the cave. Elias aimed his weapon, the beam of light shaking against the stone walls. Shadows shifted, moving like hungry ghosts. The alien girl pressed herself against the wall, her silver eyes wide with terror. The creatures stepped into view. Their bodies were long, thin, covered in dark scales that blended with the rock. Their mouths split into rows of sharp teeth and their claws scratched sparks against the floor. They hissed, circling, waiting for the moment to strike. Elias fired. The shot cut through the darkness with a blast of light, striking one of the beasts in the chest. It screamed, its voice echoing like metal tearing apart. The others shrieked in reply, their glowing eyes narrowing with rage. The girl covered her ears, trembling. Elias pulled her closer. "Stay behind me," he ordered. Another creature leapt from the wall, claws spread wide. Elias spun and fired again, hitting its shoulder. The beast collapsed, but 3 more slid from the shadows, their tails whipping against the stone. There were too many. Elias grabbed the girl's arm. "Run!" She hesitated, but the sight of another beast crawling from the ceiling pushed her forward. Together they ran deeper into the cave, the monsters chasing, their screeches shaking the stone. The tunnels twisted and narrowed. Elias fired whenever a creature came too close, but he knew his power cells would not last forever. The girl's breathing grew heavier, and her weak legs stumbled over the rocks. She was exhausted, injured, and frightened beyond reason. Finally, they reached a chamber. The roof opened to the night sky, letting cold blue light spill across the stone. Elias stopped, panting, and looked around. The creatures did not follow. They lingered at the edges, growling, but none dared step into the light. The girl collapsed to her knees, her small hands shaking. Elias crouched beside her, studying her face. Up close, she looked even younger than he first thought, no more than a child in human years. Her skin shimmered faintly, as if dusted with stars. Her eyes were not only large, but carried something ancient, something wise, yet now they were filled only with fear. "Who are you?" Elias asked gently. The girl struggled to breathe. She pressed the broken communicator to her chest as if it was her last piece of hope. Her lips moved slowly. "Exile," she whispered. "Left here. No return." Elias frowned. "Exiled by who?" She shook her head, tears rolling down her pale cheeks. "My people. No mercy, no home, only death." Her words were broken, but the meaning was clear. She had been cast out, left on this hostile world as punishment. Elias sat back, stunned. Exile was worse than death. To abandon a child on a planet filled with predators, that was cruelty beyond reason. The girl tried to stand but stumbled. Elias caught her before she fell. She was light, frail, as if hunger had hollowed her bones. He looked at the scraps of fabric that barely covered her body. She had nothing. No tools, no food, no chance of survival. And yet somehow she had lived. Elias pulled a small ration pack from his belt. He opened it and handed it to her. At first she hesitated, her wide eyes studying him as if unsure whether to trust. Then hunger won. She took the food in trembling hands and ate quickly, as if she feared it would be taken away. For a moment, Elias watched in silence. He remembered how the laws of the Galactic Council were strict. Humans were not allowed to interfere with alien punishments. If he saved her, if he took her from this planet, he could be branded a criminal. But when he saw the girl's desperate hands clutching crumbs of food, when he heard the soft sound of her trying not to cry, something inside him hardened. He could not walk away. "You're safe now," he said quietly. "I won't leave you here." The girl looked up at him, her eyes shining with disbelief. No one had ever promised her safety before. Slowly she whispered, "Humans. Different." The words were soft, but Elias felt their weight. She had met others before, aliens who had cast her aside. Yet she saw something different in him. The moment was broken by a distant roar. The creatures were still there, waiting in the shadows. Elias stood and looked at the sky through the opening in the cave roof. The stars burned cold above them. His ship was miles away, across dunes crawling with predators. He had a choice: stay hidden here until the girl starved, or risk everything by taking her across the desert to his ship. He looked down at her, frail but hopeful, clutching the broken communicator like a child holding a doll. The choice was already made. Elias reached out his hand. "Come, we leave at dawn." The girl blinked, unsure. Then slowly she placed her small hand in his. Her skin was cool, almost weightless, yet the touch carried trust. As the night stretched on, Elias sat awake, his weapon resting across his knees. The girl curled beside him, finally drifting into uneasy sleep. Around them the growls echoed, never-ending. The planet itself seemed alive, a predator waiting for the right moment. Elias stared at the stars above the cave. He knew this was no simple rescue. If the Galactic Council discovered what he had done, humanity could face punishment. But when he looked at the sleeping child, fragile and exiled, he felt no regret. He had found her. And he had chosen to save her. But deep inside he knew the real danger had only just begun. The sun rose over the desert world like a burning blade. Its light cut across the dunes, painting the sky in cruel shades of red and orange. Heat shimmered off the rocks and the air grew sharp, thin and hostile. Elias stood at the edge of the cave, watching the horizon. His hand rested on his weapon and his eyes never stopped scanning. The night had been long, filled with distant roars and scratching claws against stone. The creatures had not dared enter the chamber, but he knew they were still out there, watching, waiting. Behind him, the alien girl stirred. She sat up slowly, blinking against the harsh light. Her silver skin glowed faintly in the dawn, but her body trembled with weakness. She clutched the broken communicator in her small hands as if it still carried hope. Elias turned to her. "We move now," he said firmly. "If we stay, they'll corner us." The girl looked at the cave walls, fear shadowing her eyes. Outside, death. Elias crouched beside her, meeting her gaze. "Yes, but if we don't reach my ship, you will die here." "Do you understand?" She hesitated, then gave the smallest nod. She trusted him, though fear still chained her heart. Elias helped her to her feet. Her steps were unsteady, but his hand guided her forward. Together they walked into the burning light of the desert. The world stretched wide, endless dunes rolling like waves of fire. The heat pressed down, making every breath heavy. Around them, the silence was broken only by distant echoes, the calls of predators hidden beneath the sand. Elias kept his weapon ready, his eyes sharp. He had traveled hostile planets before, but this one was different. The air itself seemed to hate intruders. The ground shifted too easily, as if the desert was alive, waiting to swallow them whole. The girl stumbled, her strength fading. Elias lifted her onto his back without hesitation. She was light, almost weightless, but he could feel how fragile she was. Every step mattered. Suddenly, the sand rippled ahead of them. Elias stopped. The ground bulged, then split open with a roar. A massive creature burst from beneath the dune, its body armored, its jaws wide enough to crush stone. The girl screamed, clinging to Elias's shoulders. The monster slammed forward, the ground shaking with its weight. Elias fired, his shot burning into the beast's hide. The creature screeched but did not fall. Instead it lunged, its claws tearing the sand apart. Elias spun, running across the dunes with the girl on his back. The beast gave chase, its massive body plowing through the sand. Each step it took shook the ground like thunder. The girl's voice was broken with panic. "It hunts, always hunts." Elias's lungs burned as he ran. He aimed behind him and fired again. The blast struck the creature's face, blinding one glowing eye. It roared, thrashing in rage, but still it came. Ahead, jagged rocks rose from the sand. Elias sprinted toward them, his boots slipping on the shifting ground. At the last moment he dove between two sharp ridges. The creature slammed against the rocks, its body too large to follow. Sand and stone rained down as it roared in fury, snapping its jaws. For now they were safe. Elias set the girl down gently. She was shaking, her silver eyes filled with tears. "No escape," she whispered. "This world kills all." Elias knelt, gripping her shoulders. "Not you. Not while I'm here." Her lips trembled. "Why help me?" "No one helps exile." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said simply, "Because you're a child. And no child deserves this." The girl's eyes softened. She stared at him as if trying to understand the strange heart of a human. Slowly she nodded. though her hands still clutched the communicator tightly. They rested in the shadow of the rocks, but the world did not allow peace for long. Elias's scanner beeped sharply. Dozens of life signs moved beneath the sand. The monsters were circling, drawn to their scent. He looked at the horizon. His ship lay far beyond the dunes, hidden in the distance. They would have to cross open ground, chased at every step. The girl noticed his silence. "You cannot win," she whispered. Elias stood, adjusting his weapon. "I don't need to win. I just need to keep us alive." The desert wind rose, carrying the growls of predators. The sand began to shift again, rippling like water. One beast after another broke the surface, smaller than the first, but fast, quick as shadows. Their teeth gleamed in the light, and their tails whipped like blades. Elias pulled the girl behind him. "Stay close." The creatures screeched and charged. Elias fired, the blast tearing into the sand. One beast fell, another leapt, its claws nearly striking him. He ducked, swinging his weapon like a club, smashing the creature aside. The girl cried out, clutching his arm as the pack closed in. The desert had come alive. The hostile world was striking back with everything it had. Elias gritted his teeth. He knew this was only the beginning. If they survived the desert, they would still face something far worse. The judgment of the galaxy that had abandoned this child. But he had made his choice. As he fired again, the girl's voice broke through the chaos. "Humans fight for others, not like them." Her words gave him strength. His shots grew sharper, his movements faster. He fought not for survival alone, but for her, for the promise he had made. The beasts circled, but Elias stood firm. The desert would not take her. Not today. And as the sun burned above, turning the sky into fire, Elias knew the truth. This hostile world would test every part of him. But humanity was stubborn. Humanity never bowed. And he would show this cursed planet what it meant to be human. The night returned with silence, but it was not peace. Elias and the alien girl had found shelter in the broken shell of an ancient ruin, half buried under sand and stone. Strange pillars carved with symbols rose from the ground like the bones of giants. The air was cooler here, but heavy with the weight of forgotten history. Elias built a small fire with scraps from his pack. The flames glowed faintly, pushing the shadows back. The girl sat across from him, her knees pulled to her chest, her silver eyes reflecting the firelight. She had eaten the last of his rations and now sat quietly, clutching her broken communicator as though it still held power. For a long time, neither spoke. The desert outside whispered with shifting sand, and the wind carried faint growls in the distance. Elias sharpened the edge of his blade, his face calm but alert. He knew the creatures would not give up so easily. Finally, he broke the silence. "You said you were exile. Tell me why." The girl lowered her head. At first, she did not answer. But then her trembling voice rose from the dark. "My people, the council. They rule with fear. Obey or die." "I refused," Elias frowned. "Refused what?" Her eyes lifted, glowing faintly with pain. "They wanted me to hurt, to follow orders, to destroy those weaker, but I could not. They called me broken, weak, unfit, so they left me here, on this world, no return. No mercy." Her voice cracked and tears slipped down her silver cheeks. She covered her face with her hands, ashamed. Elias's chest tightened. A child punished for mercy. A child abandoned because she chose compassion over cruelty. The council had called that weakness, but Elias saw something else. He spoke softly. "You were not weak. You were strong. Stronger than them." The girl shook her head. "No, I am nothing. Exile is nothing. No name, no future. Only death." Elias leaned forward, his eyes steady. "Then listen to me. You are not nothing. Not while I am here." Her hands lowered slowly. She looked at him as if trying to believe. No one had ever spoken to her that way. The fire crackled and shadows danced across the ruin walls. Strange carvings glowed faintly in the flickering light, as if the stones themselves listened. The girl spoke again, her words quieter. "If you take me from here, they will hunt you. The council watches all. They will not forgive. They will punish you, your people." Elias's jaw tightened. He knew she was right. The laws of the Galactic Council were cruel, absolute. If he rescued her, humanity itself could face their wrath. Earth was still young among the stars, fragile compared to older races. To risk everything for one child, some would call it foolish. But Elias looked at the girl, small, starving, trembling yet alive, and his decision did not waver. "Let them come," he said. "If saving a child makes me guilty, then I accept the punishment." The girl's lips parted in shock. Her eyes filled again, but this time not only with fear, there was a spark of hope. She whispered, "Humans." "Different?" Elias gave a faint smile. "Yes, different. We don't leave children to die." The night deepened, and outside the ruin the desert stirred. Elias could hear claws scratching on stone, the low growl of predators circling. They were trapped between monsters of the world and the wrath of the galaxy. But for the first time since her exile, the girl did not feel completely alone. She reached across the fire, her hand trembling, and placed it on his arm. Her skin was cool, her touch fragile. "You protect me. Why?" "You do not know me." Elias looked at her hand, then at her eyes. His voice was steady. "Because I know what it means to be abandoned. I know what it means to need someone. No one deserves to be left behind." The girl blinked, her breath catching. Slowly, she nodded, as if his words stitched something broken inside her. But the peace was short. A sudden crash echoed through the ruins. The fire flickered and the ground trembled. Elias jumped to his feet, weapon in hand. The girl gasped, clutching the communicator tightly. From the darkness of the pillars, glowing eyes appeared, dozens, closing in. The predators had followed. Elias pulled the girl behind him. His mind raced. He could fight, but not against so many. His power cells were low, his energy nearly spent. The girl's voice shook. "We cannot win." Elias glanced at the broken communicator in her hands. "That thing, does it still work?" She shook her head. "No, only pieces." But Elias saw something different. The device still flickered faintly, pulsing with strange energy. He had studied alien tech before, and though this one was damaged, perhaps it could be turned into something else, a beacon. "A trap, a weapon," he whispered. "Then we make it work." The girl stared at him, uncertain, but his determination was unshakable. Together they crouched by the fire, the predators closing in around the ruins. As Elias worked quickly, his hands steady despite the danger, the girl watched him. For the first time since her exile, she felt something strange, a belief that survival was possible. The monsters circled, their growls rising. The desert itself seemed ready to devour them, but Elias did not falter. This was humanity's strength, not power, not laws, not cruelty. But the refusal to give up, the stubborn will to fight for what was right. The secret of the exile was clear now. She had been abandoned for her kindness, and because of that same kindness, a human had chosen to fight for her. And as the predators crept closer, Elias prepared to show them the price of hope. The ruins shook with growls. Dozens of glowing eyes circled Elias and the alien girl, their light cutting through the shadows. The predators of the desert were patient hunters. They had waited all night, and now they were ready to strike. Elias crouched low beside the broken communicator, his fingers working fast. Sparks jumped as he twisted wires and pulled apart damaged circuits. The girl knelt close, watching him with wide, trembling eyes. "It is broken," she whispered. "No use." Elias shook his head. "It doesn't need to talk. It just needs to shine." The girl frowned, not understanding. He looked at her quickly, his voice firm but calm. "These creatures fear light. If we can make this glow bright enough, we buy time to run." Her eyes widened. "Run to your ship?" "Yes, but it won't be easy." The creatures screeched from the edge of the ruin. Their claws scraped against the pillars, sending sparks into the dark. The fire flickered low, almost gone. Without it, nothing stood between the monsters and their prey. The girl clutched the communicator tighter, then handed it to him. "Then use it." "I trust you." Elias worked faster. His hands moved with the skill of a soldier who had fixed machines under fire before. He pulled a power cell from his weapon and wired it into the device. The girl's communicator flickered once, then glowed brighter than before. A soft silver light filled the ruin. The predators hissed, pulling back slightly. Their glowing eyes narrowed in anger. Elias stood, holding the device high. The light spread across the stone walls, pushing the creatures back step by step. But he could see their hunger. They would not stay back for long. "Now," Elias said, turning to the girl. "We run." She hesitated, fear freezing her feet. But Elias grabbed her hand, pulling her forward. Together they sprinted from the ruin into the open desert. The communicator's light cut through the darkness as they ran, but the predators followed, their screeches tearing through the night. Sand exploded around them as claws struck the ground only steps away. The girl stumbled, nearly falling, but Elias lifted her into his arms and kept running. His breath burned in his chest. His legs ached. Yet he did not slow. Behind them, the creatures roared faster than the wind. The communicator flickered. Its light grew weaker. Elias cursed under his breath. The power cell was nearly drained. The girl looked up at him, her voice breaking. It will die. Like me. Elias's jaw tightened. Not while I'm here. Ahead, the dunes stretched endlessly, the horizon still far away. His ship lay beyond, hidden in the sand. He needed another plan, something to turn the hunt against the hunters. Then he saw it. Jagged cliffs rising from the desert, their sharp edges glowing faintly under the stars. He shifted course, racing toward them. The predators screamed, sensing their prey escaping. They surged forward, their bodies leaping across the sand. Elias's boots pounded against the ground as he reached the base of the cliffs. He shoved the communicator into the girl's hands. Hold it high. Don't drop it. She lifted it with both hands, the fading glow washing her face in silver. Elias turned, raising his weapon. He aimed at the cliffs, not at the beasts. At the stone itself. The first shot cracked the rock. The second tore deeper. The third made the cliff tremble. The predators lunged, their jaws snapping. Elias fired again. The cliffside split with a thunderous crack and a wave of rock and sand collapsed. The avalanche roared down, crashing over the creatures. Dust filled the air, drowning their screams. The ground shook as the desert itself buried them. Silence followed. Elias coughed through the dust, his chest heaving. He looked at the girl, still clutching the faintly glowing communicator, her eyes wide with shock. You... Move the mountain, she whispered. Elias shook his head. No, just gave it a push. The girl's lips trembled, but then slowly a smile touched her face for the first time. It was small, fragile, but real. For a moment, Elias allowed himself to breathe. The predators were buried, but not gone forever. More would come. The desert always had more. He looked to the horizon. We need to reach the ship before sunrise. The girl tilted her head. Why sunrise? Because when the sun rises, the desert wakes, and the biggest hunters come out to feed. Her small smile vanished, replaced with dread. Elias adjusted his weapon and motioned for her to follow. We move now. The girl stumbled beside him, but there was a new fire in her eyes. She had seen the ruin of the predators. She had seen a human refuse to surrender. As they crossed the dunes, the stars above began to fade. The first glow of dawn touched the horizon. The air grew hotter, sharper. The girl clutched the communicator tightly, though its light was nearly gone. Finally, in the distance, she saw it. A shape half buried in sand. Elias's ship, her breath caught. We can leave? Elias nodded, though his face was grim. If we survive the last stretch, the desert growled again. The ground trembled. Far away, a shadow moved across the dunes, larger than anything they had faced before. The girl's grip on his arm tightened. Her voice was a whisper of terror. They wake. Elias raised his weapon, his eyes locked on the horizon. The escape plan was in motion, but the desert world was not finished with them yet. The desert burned under the rising sun. Elias and the girl staggered across the dunes, their bodies heavy with exhaustion. Behind them, the sand still trembled where something massive hunted far away. Ahead, half buried in golden dust, Elias's ship gleamed like salvation. The girl's steps faltered. Elias carried her the last stretch, sweat pouring down his face. His boots sank into the hot sand as he climbed to the ship's ramp. Almost there, he muttered. Just a little more. The girl's silver eyes opened weakly. Safe? She whispered. Elias didn't answer. Not yet. He slammed his hand against the hatch. The ship's doors hissed open, the stale air of home washing over him. He carried her inside, laying her gently on a seat. The door sealed shut, shutting out the desert's roar. For the first time since landing, Elias let out a breath. They had survived the predators. But deep in his chest, he knew this was not the end. The ship's systems flickered to life. Screens glowed, controls hummed, and the engines rumbled. Elias strapped himself into the pilot's chair, setting coordinates for orbit. Then it happened. The warning light blinked red. A sharp alarm cut through the cockpit. On the radar, 3 signals appeared, small, fast, approaching from the upper atmosphere. The girl gasped, clutching his arm. Council. Elias's blood ran cold. They've already found us. The three ships descended like hawks. Sleek, black with wings curved like blades, they cut through the sky in perfect formation. Their symbols glowed with authority, markings of the Galactic Council. A voice cracked through the comms, cold and sharp. Human vessel, power down immediately. You are in violation of galactic law. Do not resist. Elias's jaw tightened. He glanced at the girl. She was shaking, her silver skin pale with fear. They want me, she whispered. If you give me to them, they will let you live. Elias turned to her, his eyes steady. Not happening. Her lips trembled. But they will kill you. They will kill all humans. Elias looked back at the approaching ships. His hands hovered over the controls. The Council did not forgive defiance. Humanity was still small among the stars, new, fragile. One man's choice could bring punishment on his entire species, and yet, he remembered her voice in the cave. Exile, no mercy, no home. He remembered her tears when she said she was nothing. No law, no council, no punishment could make him leave her behind. He flicked the switches. The engines roared to full power. His ship shook as it prepared to rise. The comm's voice returned, sharper, angrier. Last warning, human. Hand over the exile child. This is not your fight, Elias answered, his voice low but fierce. It is now. The ship blasted upward, sand exploding behind them. The council fighters swerved, then dove after him, their engines howling like predators. The girl gripped the seat, eyes wide. They will not stop. Council always wins. Elias forced a thin smile. Then it's time someone proved them wrong. The sky turned black as they pierced the atmosphere. Stars opened above, cold and endless. But the fighters stayed close, their weapons charging. Red lights danced across Elias's controls as targeting systems locked on. Laser fire streaked past, shaking the hull. The girl cried out, covering her ears. Elias twisted the ship, rolling hard to the left. The desert world spun below them. They're faster, Elias muttered, but we're smarter. He dove the ship low, skimming the edge of the planet's upper storms. Lightning split the clouds, thunder shaking the stars themselves. The council fighters followed, their formation perfect, their discipline unbroken. The girl clung to her seat, her voice breaking. Why risk everything for me? Elias gritted his teeth, guiding the ship between towers of storm. Because you're a child. Because no one deserves to be abandoned. Because that's what it means to be human. Her eyes filled with tears. She had never heard words like that before. Not from her people. Not from anyone. Behind them, the council fighters closed in, their lights burning through the storm. Elias's radar screamed. One hit would tear them apart. He spotted a canyon of clouds ahead, a tunnel of lightning twisting through the atmosphere. It was death for anyone who entered. But maybe, just maybe, it was also a shield. Elias pulled the ship into the storm canyon. Bolts of energy struck the hull, alarms flashing red. The girl cried out, clutching the straps, but Elias's hands were steady. The council fighters followed, weaving through the lightning. One was struck, its wings ripped apart in fire. It spun into the storm and vanished. Two remained. Elias pushed harder, his teeth clenched. Sweat dripped down his face as he guided the ship through chaos. Another bolt struck close, rocking them violently. The girl screamed. But Elias only whispered, "Hold on." Then, like a spear, the ship burst out of the storm into the clear black of space. Silence returned. Only two council fighters still pursued, their weapons glowing brighter. They would not stop. Not until the exile was theirs. Elias's fuel ran low. His weapons were weaker. He could not win this fight forever. The girl's voice broke through the silence, soft but desperate. You should leave me. If they take me, you live. Your people live. Elias turned, meeting her eyes. His voice was iron. No, humanity does not abandon children. Not today. Not ever. Her breath caught. For the first time she believed him. Outside, the council's shadow loomed large. The galaxy itself was turning against him. But Elias's hands did not shake. He had already made his choice, and now the stars would burn with it. The stars stretched endless around them. Elias's ship trembled as the engines strained, fuel running low. Behind, two council fighters followed like wolves, their weapons glowing red, ready to strike. Inside the cockpit, silence hung heavy except for alarms. The girl sat strapped to her seat, her small hands gripping the broken communicator. Her silver eyes were wide, filled with fear, but also something new. Hope. Elias's jaw tightened as he studied the controls. He could not outrun the fighters. He could not outgun them either. Humanity's ships were not built to face the Council's enforcers. But he had one thing they didn't: a choice. The comms crackled again, the voice cold, sharp, merciless. "Human vessel, this is your final command. Surrender the exile. You will be spared. Resist and your species will suffer for your crime." The girl's lips trembled. She whispered, "Please, give me to them. I don't want humans to die because of me." Elias turned slowly, his eyes steady on hers. "Listen to me. They already left you to die. They already decided your life meant nothing. But they were wrong. Your life matters. You matter. And no council can tell me otherwise." Her breath caught, tears running down her pale cheeks. No one had ever spoken for her before. No one had ever chosen her life over their own. The comm's voice sharpened, now filled with anger. "Human, your defiance will condemn your world. Last chance. Hand her over." Elias's hands moved across the controls, locking weapons. His heart pounded, but his voice was calm when he answered. "Then hear this. Humanity does not abandon children. Not now, not ever. If you want her, you'll have to go through me." The girl gasped softly, whispering, "You fight?" "For me?" Elias gave the smallest smile. "For you. For what's right." The council fighters fired. Blazing beams tore across the darkness. Elias's ship rolled hard, narrowly avoiding the blasts. The hull shook, sparks flying across the cockpit. "Hold on," Elias shouted, diving into a cluster of asteroids. The girl screamed, clutching the straps as the ship weaved between massive rocks. The council fighters followed, their sleek frames cutting through the field with deadly precision. Elias fired back, his cannons blazing. One shot struck an asteroid, sending shards of stone spinning into the path of a fighter. The alien ship swerved, but not fast enough. The rock slammed into its wing, tearing it apart. Fire burst across the void as the ship spun out of control and vanished in a flash. One left. The girl's eyes widened. "You destroyed it." Elias's hands tightened on the controls. "One, but there will be more." The last fighter closed in, faster, deadlier, its weapons fully charged. Elias's ship rattled as another blast struck the hull. Warnings screamed across his screens. One more hit and they would not survive. The girl's voice was soft, trembling. "You can't win." Elias glanced at her, his expression fierce. "Maybe not. But sometimes victory is not about winning. It's about choosing." He guided the ship out of the asteroid field. The stars opened wide again, cold and endless. The council fighter loomed behind, its guns glowing like a rising sun. The girl clutched his arm. "What choice?" Elias pressed a final sequence into the controls. "The choice to protect you no matter the cost." The engine screamed as he spun the ship, facing the fighter head-on. His weapons locked, power surging into one last charge. The girl's breath froze, her silver eyes wide with terror. "You can't," she whispered. Elias's voice was steady. "Watch me." The council fighter fired first, a beam of death streaking toward them. Elias roared and unleashed his own shot. The blast collided in the dark, exploding into blinding light. The shockwave ripped through space, shaking both ships violently. The cockpit filled with sparks, alarms screaming louder. The girl covered her face, crying out. Elias gritted his teeth, forcing the ship to hold steady against the storm. When the light faded, silence returned. Smoke filled the cockpit. The council fighter drifted in the distance, damaged but not destroyed. Elias's ship shook, systems failing, power flickering. They could not fight much longer. The girl turned to him, her voice breaking. "We will die." Elias reached out, taking her hand in his. His grip was firm, unshakable. "No, if I fall standing. And if humanity must be judged for saving you, then let it be so." Her tears spilled freely. For the first time she smiled through them. "Humans, our hope." Elias's screens flickered again. More signals appeared on the radar. Not one. Not two. Dozens. A whole fleet of council warships arriving, their shadows blotting out the stars. The girl's face went pale. "They come." Elias stared at the endless lights, his hand still holding hers. His voice was quiet but filled with steel. "Then humanity's story begins today." The council fleet closed in, their weapons ready. The exile child clung to the human who had chosen her life over the galaxy's law. And in that fragile moment before the storm, the fate of two species hung in the silence of the stars.